something you've never heard that will blow your mind. Once upon a time, I told you stories from Africa. Fun enough to make you laugh. Bright enough to light your day. Super lessons you learn from it, and it makes you go.
Hello children, welcome to Grandma Wura's Story Hut, where my stories give you wings and fly you on an African adventure. Today's story is titled The Rude Prince. A long time ago, in a little village called Nkbo in the eastern part of Nigeria, lived this royal family. The king and the queen were amazing leaders, but they were very worried about their son, Prince Ochemba, who seemed to be so arrogant and very prideful. The people of the land did not like Ochemba because he was so arrogant and spoke so rudely to everyone around him. Even the chiefs were very displeased with him because he had no respect. This bothered the queen very much, and she decided she had to do something about it. As the future king of Nkbo, Ochemba was expected to be loving, ready to serve with a humble heart, and be accommodating to people around him. Then one day, the queen fell ill. And it was said that the only thing that could heal her of her illness was a special healing flower that could be gotten from a neighboring village, which was also a rival village called Fungi. And only the person whom the queen chose was to go for this flower. As a result, the queen decided it had to be Prince Ochemba. Oh, this worried the king as he tried to convince her to change her mind and choose someone else. But she maintained that Prince Ochemba should go on that journey. It was useless trying to convince her any further, as she was falling more ill by the days. So immediately, Prince Ochemba was asked to disguise as a beggar so that no one in Fungi would know that he was the prince of Nkbo. Quickly, Ochemba was gotten ready, and before he left, having packed his food, his snack, water, all in his bag, the head of chiefs called him and said, on this journey you would need 3 things. 1, a humble heart. 2, a heart that shares. And 3, a heart that forgives. Prince Ochemba just nodded and set out on his journey. Miles away from Nkbo, just on the outskirts of Fungi, Prince Ochemba was accosted by a group of thieves. Not knowing who they were, he spoke very harshly and brashly with them, and they dealt with him by beating him up and taking all of his food and water that he had taken with him. He was injured very badly. Somehow he had to pick himself up and continued on his journey. With no place to stay, no food to eat, the prince felt very alone that night. For days he continued on this journey, roaming around in search for food, begging for food, but no one would give him food until he came upon an old man who was working on his farm. The old man had pity on him and gave him some food and water. The old man asked him what his name was, but he was unable to tell him that he was Prince Ochemba. However, the old man took him in. Oh, Prince Ochemba was so grateful to the elderly man. And before he left, the old man had packed some food and snacks for him. By this time, Prince Ochemba was beginning to have a somewhat more humble spirit. He came across a stream where he saw a little girl trying to fetch some water from the stream. And before she could even dip her pot into the stream, these other little children came around her and began to beat her. They took her pot and threw it to the ground, and her pot broke into two. Quickly, Prince Ochemba ran after the little children. Then he chased the children away. Prince Ochemba turned to the little girl and said, "Oh, how are you going to fetch water now that your pot has been broken into two?" She only smiled, picked up her 2 pieces of clay pot and said, "Everything can always be mended as long as there is forgiveness." And then she joined the 2 pieces and they came together as a whole instantly. Prince Ochemba was shocked. Then she said to him, "You look like you do not come from around here. You must be on a journey. Where are you headed to?" And then he said, "I am on my way to Fungi in search of the healing flower." "Oh," she said, "the healing flower." And she pointed in the direction that he should go. And thereon, he continued his journey from there. On his way again, Prince Ochemba came across a tribe of monkeys who began to play around him mischievously. And then they pulled his bag with his sack of food, which he had hung on his arm. He chased after them, and just as he did so, he caught one of them. The monkey begged for forgiveness. And after a while, he looked at the monkey and remembered that he had to have a heart that was sharing. And so he allowed the monkey go with his food. He continued on his journey and came upon the beautiful forest with the healing flower. He was so excited. Finally, he could take the flower and rush back home to Umpo. But as he was about to grab the flower would always sting him. He tried again the second time. He got stung by the flower. The third time, he got stung again by the flower. It was no use. Then he tried to go through the 3 things that he had been asked to do. First was a heart of humility, a humble heart. Second was a sharing heart. And third was a forgiving heart. He had done the first 2. The last, he had to think more deeply about. Was there anybody he was holding in unforgiveness? Then it hit him. The thieves that had beaten him up at the very beginning of this journey and taken all that he had with him. Now, in order for him to get this healing flower, he had to forgive them. Instantly, he stood up and went back all the way on the journey, back to the very spot where he had been robbed. At that spot, he met the gang of thieves and told them he was back to forgive them. They were shocked. and asked him, "You mean you came all the way back to come and tell us that you have forgiven us?" No one had ever done that to them before. Somehow, this gave them a change of heart. After he was done forgiving the thieves, he then traveled back all the way to where the healing flower was. When he tried to pick the healing flower this time, there was no sting. Quickly, he took the healing flower and put it in his sack and hurried back to Nkpo. By this time, his mother was already near death. But there was still time to save her. The healing flower was prepared and given to her. In 3 days, his mother was back to normal, healed of every illness that was present in her body. By this time, everyone in the village had noticed that Prince Ochemba had become a new person. This time, he spoke more respectfully to people. He was more sensitive to what people had to say to him. And he cared more about serving others before being served. The king and queen were most pleased by the outcome of this journey and the impact that it had on Prince Ochemba. Now, he was ready to be king. The end. I hope you learned a thing or two from today's story. But don't you worry, there is always one more story for another day. Until we come your way again on the Grandma Wura's Story Heart. This is Grandma Wura saying bye-bye.
Today, on the Grandma Wura's Story Heart, we learned that it is a very bad thing to be proud and arrogant, or treat people like they are beneath us. We also learned that on our life's journey, we will need to be really, really humble, as we will require the help of others in order to succeed. Unlike Ochemba, we never should be so rude to our elders or even people that we meet every day. Discuss more of the other lessons you learned today with your parents or guardians. You can reach me at Grandma Wura on Facebook and Instagram with the supervision of an adult. Also visit www.proudafricanroots.com to get your own copy of the Grandma Wura Story Heart ebook.
Tell you something you've never heard that will blow your mind. Once upon a time, I told you stories from Africa. Fun enough to make you laugh. Bright enough to light your day. Super lessons you learn from it, and it makes you go.